Hi, and welcome back to my reading of The Introduction to the Dictionary of Demons by Fred Gettings. Now, if you have seen my first part, you will be getting it. You know who we are. Allegedly. Carrying on from where we left off, the emergence of Christian demonism was gradual, for as Origen records, why did I do that? Metal. Who? Dickens' son. The early church did not specify particular doctrines in connection with either the angels or the demons, though Origen himself is anxious to point to the notion that the ancient power of demons was forever broken with Christ's descent to earth, in which connection see Pan. He also insists that the guardian angel of each human being is charged with the power to repel the work of the demons, although man appears to have the freedom to reject this tutelary spirit and fall into the clutches of the devil. However, redemption is always possible, possibly for a price. Hell's Eve. For several centuries, the Christian attitude to demons and demonologies was much the same as the contemporaneous pagans. The early Christians were familiar with the demonology of the Jewish apocalyptic literature and with the classical demonisms, and these streams of thought definitely entered into early Christian writing, influencing such important notions as the abyss or the beast, and perhaps confusing certain things about the nature of Satan. We do, however, find Justin explaining the existence of evil as a result of the transgression of angelic beings who had submitted to sexual intercourse with human women. Who would do that? Thereby giving birth to demons. See, that can happen. Look at Karen Gillan. And we'll use Karen Gillan as a field study. She's a possible. Well, the child has like 8 eyes in its head, so we're just interested at this point. Tatian is the first to note that the demons have only spiritual bodies, mainly composed of air or fire. This is the child flatulate. We must recall that these elements are not those described by modern science, so be careful. It appears to be the Greek Christian Basil. Is it green? Who proposed that the guardian angels are actually driven away from their charges by the odor of sin. Does it smell bad? Suggesting that the Christian notion of what is now called the astral plane, because that's where you'll be if you've been sniffing that shit too long, the true domain of the demons. You might get grumpy. Around a child, that can be, not kosher. Was established at a relatively early time. Tertullian writes of the fall of the angels and views the demons as their progeny. That's a song by Celtic Frost. Yet he sees his fall and demonogenesis as a freely accepted corruption, an act of sacrifice. He nominates Satan, not H.R. Geiger, as the chief of the fallen angels, who appear to be different from the demons, a notion which is now overlooked in much modern theology. The doctrine of the Diabolus is again specifically Christian, and its origins may be found in Lactantius. Tantalizing. Who, thank you, Tim. Take that away. Who holds that this being was created by God before the world itself was created. The evil instilled into the Diabolus was again willingly received even in spice. Lactantius also records that the name Diabolus is used by the Greek church, but the Latin church call him Criminator. That's a cool name. Augustine adds little to these notions, but views the purpose of the evil angels, wow, that's a cool name too, as being the deception of mankind. Hey, there's another cool name. Go, Mick. Their aim being to bring men to a state of perdition, sir. They mostly easily do this by means of divination and magic, two of the occult activities which most obviously worried Augustine, for his writings betray a sort of love-hate relationship with pagan magic. Okay. So he's got issues. A curious Christian notion is that the demons are under the control of God. Augustine developed this concept, which perplexed theologians for centuries, and expressed ideas which resulted in much hair splitting in the later witch trials. No joke. Augustines. How August of you. The role of the demons as the punishers of both the wicked and the transgressing good, and sometimes as the testers of men, probably harks back to the Criminator tradition. That's where you get cops. The early apologists and even the church fathers contributed to a detailed study of the Bible with a view to establishing the real identity of the various outlandish figures mentioned in the Apocalypse, resulting in the creation of mythical demons and whole demonologies which still plague our literature to this day. See, for example, Antichrist and Beast. And Sam Neill. He's all that. And a bag of, I think they have crisps over in Chile in country. Aotearoa. It's over there. They can hear me. The early apologists, and even the church fathers contributed a detailed study of the Bible with a view to establishing the real identity of the various... Yes, I've read that. Oh, we're down to there, Antichrist and Beast. Yeah, sorry. That was a boring bit. Sorry, bro. Satan, as the Christian demon. There you go, Maori. Maori. We have Murrays. Moo. Our literature and Satan, as the Christian demon, emerges as a created angel who is opposed to the goodness of God. It is Athenagoras. That's got to be Greek. Well, they're over there. They're in Melbourne. Who expresses this opinion. And he also notes that the demons are anxious for blood sacrifice. One of the difficulties with which... yes, they're difficult people, demons. With which the early church struggled... They're not people, actually. We've sort of covered that. That the demons are anxious for blood sacrifice. One of the difficulties with which the early church struggled in the West. The need... It doesn't get more West than us. The demons... 3,500-year-old mace heads. Oh my lordy. He's arrived. You get him to stop that shit. Not one single Viking settlement in any of the Welsh kingdoms, I might add. Ever. Ever. Quaid. The demon... My gut's going haywire. We're also dowsers. The demonism specific to Christianity appears to have developed, like so many other Christian notions, from the attempt to combat Gnosticism. Like Sir Christopher Lee, he practiced Gnostic ritual, especially that of the Basilidians. And then we're back to the basil. We learn a great deal about the ambivalent relationship between Christian ritual and pagan magic from the supposed confessions of Cyprian. He turned from paganism to Christianity with all the bombast and breastbeating of a new convert. Cyprian had been initiated into many of the ancient streams of wisdom and was converted. He eventually became Bishop of Antioch and was later martyred. He is therefore one of the few important historical personages to stand astride the old and the new worlds. Most revealing in his story is the light thrown not only upon the magical praxes with which the church contended and complied, but also upon the current beliefs about demons and the Dread Pirate Roberts. In his initiations, all set out with the spirit of a converted alcoholic, speaking of his former drunken states. He learned of the different types and grades of demons. In Egyptian Memphis, he beheld in astral vision, like fucking Kenneth Anger, the souls of the giants held fast in darkness and saw the astral forms of the many human sins, like fucking Marianne Faithfull. In the mystery centers of Chaldea, he was taught the secrets of the 365 demons, who divide between them the parts of the ether, and he learned the appropriate sacrifices, power words, and libations for each. 365? We learn from this tutelage that the devil obtains his materials for simulation of real things from the vapor and smoke of sacrifices, an idea which is resuscitated in several different forms in the witch hunt literature of the later medieval period. When did hemp go out of style? He recounts how he personally wrought great harm to the world with the aid of the demons and was eventually driven by an inner daemon, to repent. We may take Cyprian as a particularly dramatic example of early Christian demonism, especially as the high drama of the story seems to rest upon the important, if questionable, notion that the simple Christian Sphragus has sufficient magic within its form to counter all that the worst pagan demons might offer. An innocent idea contradicted by all the evidence, which survived unscathed even into the Malleus Maleficarum. In the early days of Christianity at least, Christ and his magic were seen as being superior to everything that had gone before. The new mystery, like the new dispensation, would succeed because of its intrinsic worth, not because of any accident of history. How the Christ of love was gradually pushed aside in the growing hypnotic concern with that dark counterpart, the devil himself, is in a sense the story of late medieval demonism. There is a wide gulf separating the demonic literature of the early Christians from the more febrile writings of those who lived after the 15th century. Help! I'll just check. I've got a couple of spots, but that's normal. The medieval attitude to demons is coloured almost entirely by partly digested classical lore and the notions derived from scholastic interpretation of the Bible by such familiar Christian writers as Augustine and Thomas Aquinas. By the late 13th century, however, there was an influx of a new demonology, along with the attendant demonic rites, literature, talismans, and sigils from the complex Arabic lore. Go punch a camel. Don't buy that shit. Blood sacrifice. You don't know. Bard slut. Where's the Black Lotus? Yeah, let's get the Black Lotus, Arabic lore. The advent of this new demonism probably explains the extraordinary floreation of the grotesques. See Lincoln Imp and gargoyles on the new cathedrals of the 13th century. It is certainly significant that these petrified demons begin to sprout from the cathedral walls at about the same time as the spiritualized astrological images begin to appear on the portals. I'll take your word for it, bro. This demonism, by its very nature, was inextricably woven into astrological learning, which so caught hold of the period. For this reason, the demonological writings of Michael Scott offer an important key to the distinctive and remarkable nature of 13th century demonism prior to the poetic vision of Dante, which came at the end of that century. I think we're getting Indians involved. Sufis. No, I think the Sufis getting involved. Scott points out that demons have great power over natural forces, so that what may appear to be natural is actually the work of demons, as for example, in terrible storms and gales. However, he does not appear to explain how incorporeal beings can act on material forms. Perhaps this kind of materialism did not concern him. The conjuration of demons is facilitated by the power, the virtue of names. Hence, it is important not only to know the rites of conjuration for specific demons and the appropriate hour in which they are to be invoked, but also to know their real or assumed names. The demons have their dwellings in the stars or in the constellations. So, they're aliens. When demons choose to become visible to man, they may adopt bodies which are semblances made from a sort of coagulated ether. Ectoplasm. I know my words. That's definitely ectoplasm. Itself normally invisible to humans. Refer to your Roddy McDowell and don't freak out. And all the trigger warnings for that movie. Seriously, if you're like Legend of Hell House. Oh, the ectoplasm sequence. I'm just like, yes. But it might be a guy thing. I don't know. I just think it's a spiritual thing that's all throughout the cosmos. So what's wrong with it? What? Don't judge me. Scott himself names 7 demons of the 7 firmaments and describes the methods of constructing the protective magic circle for conjuration. In some instances, the correct rites of conjuration require blood sacrifice, since certain demons are partial to human blood or flesh. This, of course, is a throwback to classical notions of demonic appetites. Scott appears to have taken many of the demonic names from the angelic book of the Art of Solomon, said to have been written by Adam. I wonder which one. However, as Scott's biographer, Lynn Thorndike admits, Scott is not unique among Christian writers in his acquaintance with occult literature and demonological texts. In the same century, William of Auvergne dealt with the demons at length in his influential De Universo. Well, numerous, that's the universe. See, okay, yeah, in English. Excuse me, mucus here. Ectoplasm forming. If it comes out my nose, tell me. No, we get Sergeant Elspeth on the issue. The transdimensional laser gaze. While numerous ecclesiastics wrote about efficacious amulets and talismans involving the names and sigils of demons, the extent of the demonic literature may be gauged from the survival into the 13th century of a single and relatively important stream of demonic lore discussed under the entry on Solomonic literature. That's all above board. On the table. One cannot read through medieval demonological literature without coming across mention of Dante. See Dante's demons, because Dante's learnt and he's not here today. He's got servitors now. Oh, let me help you out of your chair, demon. See, that's you just do that. See, they're smart lads. As with so many other things, Dante provides an Freudian slip, illuminating commentary upon the contemporaneous notions of demons, and at the same time catches in his lightning flash vision a terrifying image of a complex hell, where demons hate so much that they fight even with each other. where the tortures they inflict on the souls in their charge have a symbolism of the most esoteric kind, and where the center of the whole cosmos is the lowest level of hell, in the frozen lake of which sits the terrible Satan. And you've seen that, Dante's hell. He's just sitting there, frozen, bored, dejected, kind of grumpy. The one's for you, Uncle. Hell itself is an eternal state. She's been to the gates of hell, wrote Dan. Good choice. Hell itself is an eternal state, which is projected infinitely into time, with no cessation or redress for those in torment. A notion which twists and misunderstands. The word eternitas, in any case, appears to be entirely an invention of the early church, so you're cool. For it finds no parallel in pagan law. Good to be Greek. It is probably for this reason that the highly articulate accounts of purgatory were gradually introduced into Christian belief, for the notion of purgatory is found in the ancient literature and corresponds more closely to the classical idea of Hades than does the Christian view of hell. However, so I digress. Well, I have. However, so important is hell in the Christian vision given us by Dante, yet again, he's so giving, perhaps overweighted by his reliance on the astrology of the so-called Ptolemaic model of the universe. Maybe you should do more and think less. That this dark place of cold and fire becomes the center of the universe, at once the farthest, removed from God, and the very pivot upon which the spheres spin. See hell. This is slick, nicey. Do that. In this respect, Dante's vision shows that even by the 13th century, the ecclesiastical view was beginning to place great emphasis on the role of the demons and the leader, the devil, in the scheme of the world. Probably to make it 3D at this point. It also, in more than one subtle way, shows how that, seriously, look at all their artwork. It's side-scrolling. Somebody's a speed side-scroller. Shows how the two distinct beings of the early Christian literature, the Diabolus and Satanus, had merged into one terrifying figure of the devil, which found its supreme image in the baptistry of St. John in Florence. See Lucifer. Dante's vision of hell, like his vision of the heavens, merges important classical notions with the harmony of what, in another context, C.S. Lewis calls the discarded image, which is a spiritually oriented model of the universe in which the demons have just as important a part to play as the angels. The beginning of the modern period, which had its birth pains in the 15th century, so modernity began when? 15th century. Was announced on the one hand by attempts made by several scholars to collect together medieval demonic lore, and on the other hand by several attempts at a legalistic formulation of demonism within the witchcraft literature. The first resulted in a sort weakened syncretism, as, for example, in the more general treatment of occultism and natural magic by Cornelius Agrippa in his De Occulta Philosophia, and in the thousands of demonological manuscripts, replete with virtually useless names and sigils, which grace so many modern European libraries. Yeah, it is. There's a lot of the illustrations are from that. Thanks to the new presses, such collections were quickly put into book form, and as a result obtained their titles, if not for their authors, reputations which were scarcely deserved. Agrippa himself was a slipshod scholar and made many quite serious errors in transliterating some of his material relating to demons and demonic lore. These have been perpetuated in the occult tradition, virtually unnoticed, ever since the publication of his text in 1531. Among the vast demonological literature of this period, the Paracelsian Archidoxus Magica, printed in Basel in 1590, is a fair example of the way the demonic sigils were used for talismanic purposes. So refer to that one. See seals and sigils. See, so that's where he's explaining where he's gathering all his information from prior to you looking at it. The legalistic formulation of demonologies in the manner of Bogdan and others, which began in this period due to the development of the witch hunt mania and which flourished for well over 2 centuries, points to a major problem in connection with late medieval demonological literature. By the end of the 15th century, well, I'll show you this, isn't it? There's an illustration of an incubus hovering over a woman. Incubus hovering over the sleeping form of a woman. Summer Dream, 1906, by the Russian artist Konstantin Somov, 1869 to 1939. So there you go. There's an actual illustration taken from original descriptive occult literature of an incubus. So if you're into incubus, the mighty Blashak will take care of that one. Yes. Incubi. By the end of the 15th century, here we go. It's getting saucy. By the end of the 15th century, the role of demon had become more and more identified with its human servant in the form of witches and warlocks, and demons mingled freely with the humankind in all situations. From the market to the mass, the devil's among you. The distinctive and remarkable beliefs of the late medieval period are typified by the infamous Malleus Maleficarum. That's the witch hammer. The Witch Hunter's Grimoire. This document, the Hammer of Witches, Hexenhammer in German, by the Dominicans Jacob Sprenger and Heinrich Kramer, was, as Robin say, without question the most important and most sinister work on demonology ever written. So potentially the most evil book ever in existence. All references are given in the bibliography, pp 255 to 250. Yeah, like this shit, yeah, for sure, dude. Like, yeah. And that's why it's like all references are given in the bibliography. 255 and 6. Following list includes only those titles referred to by the author within the body of the text. It does not include the titles given under the individual entries, for example, blah, blah, blah. The title on everything mentioned under the Gurdjieff is not listed below as sufficient reference is given under the entry. This bibliography nowhere represents recommendations for further reading. So, yeah. That's that, and because that, he's not recommending you read it at all. So maybe don't, because this guy said, without question, the most important and most sinister work on demonology ever written. But its alleged aim was only peripherally connected with demonology, being the definition of true witchcraft and the stamping out of this aspect of diabolic activity. Whatever its merits, it was perhaps the most influential book of the 15th century, for it helped to create a standard or code by which those who, in the following centuries, savagely pursued the alleged practitioners of witchcraft could orientate themselves. What? In the following centuries, savagely pursued the alleged practitioners of witchcraft. I think that's a typo. I think there should be a so in there. So could orientate themselves. It was indeed the basis and inspiration for almost all subsequent texts on witchcraft and certainly coloured the popular view of demonology well into the 18th century. I think that's a protective measure. Smart man. In the Malleus, you put a crossroads in. In the Malleus, the devil, in his Christian form, takes on tremendous importance for the two authors of this frightful text, wherein intent on showing that witchcraft was nothing other than the substitution of the devil for Christ in the hearts, minds, and wills of witches and warlocks. Kablowie! Don't do that. This following the illogical species of argument on which the text is based appears to necessitate the renunciation of the faith, as well as paying lewd homage to the devil. This central notion is then larded with imaginative glosses, grease me up, woman, based on the supposition that the devil will exact only the most horrible and sensual of services. The killing of unbaptized children, carnal intercourse with demons, such as the incubus or with the devil, and so on. In effect, with the publication of the Malleus in 1486, the devil emerged from a rigmarole of legal imprecations and formal rules as the possessor of almost insuperable power, an ever-present threat to Christ, and the groundwork had been laid for a cult of the devil, which persisted through torture, fire, and gallows for nearly 300 years. We'll leave it at that for the moment. That's heavy. That's heavy shit. See? You don't need your game of Maisie's Family 1. My spine. If only it was Max von Sydow. Anyway, see you next time. Until then, stay cool, relax, think, read, everything.